I got, oh, we're live.
All right, guys. Hello, Get Better Faster Nation. I am Dr. Jason Bradley, and along with my co-host, the one, the only James Chester, and our incredible executive producer, Rachel Bradley, we want to welcome you to another thrilling episode of the Get Better Faster podcast. Today, we're joined by a scientist who went from studying aerospace engineering at UCLA to becoming one of the most sought-after genetic experts on the planet. Val Prisecaru holds a master's in food science and human nutrition from the University of Illinois and is finishing doctoral work in clinical nutrigenomics and multiomics at the University of Bridgeport. He spent over the last 2 decades decoding the connection between your DNA, your gut, your nutrition, and your health. He is the CEO of Genetic Wellbeing, a professor and program director of nutrigenomics at John Patrick University, and he helped build the Opus 23 platform alongside the legendary Dr. Peter D'Adamo, the very platform that top functional medicine doctors around the world use to turn raw genetic data into real life-changing protocols. Val has been called a force multiplier and a secret weapon, and today is going to break down how your genes hold the blueprint to your getting better faster. Without further ado, Val, my good friend, welcome to the show.
It is a pleasure, as always, to see you guys. How's everybody doing?
Real good, thank you. You know, I'll just jump in real fast. I'm not in my studio today. You guys might notice, for those of you that are watching this on YouTube, I'm actually in a different setting, and that's because we are all here visiting James and his beautiful Colorado mansion. I've got $1 million view looking at mountains right outside here. You know, usually my studio is in what I call the man cave with no windows in Iowa, and even if it did have windows, it'd be looking over cornfields. So I'm doing great today, Val. Thanks for asking.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And for a change of pace for me, it's nice to have the team out here with me in brilliant weather. And we're on our way to one of the largest seminars out there called Parker, and it's in Las Vegas this weekend. So we're going to go out there and meet a lot of other world changers and help spread the brand. And as Dr. Jason Bradley was saying, marketing. And the best way to do that is to go out there and meet people and shake hands, but also doing productions like this to where we can share people's messages. And this content we do here is evergreen. So people listen to this into perpetuity of time. So I think it's really cool what we're doing, and it's great to have people in real life with us. So yes, we're in the same location for once, and we've never produced like this until today. So it's going to be a really cool show. Jason mentioned you went from aerospace to genetics. It's kind of an interesting quantum leap of energy and energetics and human potential, from one to ballistic to one to looking at the macro and micro of the organism. When did you first know that you had something that could help people get better faster through this approach? I know we asked you that same question on the previous interview that we did with you, but I'm just curious, based on the larger scale of idea of rockets and ballistics to this more minute under the microscope approach to the macro and the micro of how nutrition goes into genetics and how we can help get people better with what you're doing today.
Oh, sure. So basically those are, so 3 main concepts. One, how did I go from aerospace engineering to what I'm doing now?
I think
how
it's
is it integrated? And
Yes.
then what are the stages, like when I first realized, hey, I'm really helping people. So how I switched was, I was always good at math. It just came naturally to me, maybe because I wasn't as good at English, because I didn't speak English to start off. I emigrated here from Romania. So I was almost 7 years old when my mom and I, after writing like letters for like years to my dad, writing letters to the embassies, you know, to request a political asylum. And so they finally granted it because, you know, back then, you know, early 80s, we had a little bit of a problem called Ceausescu. So it was like a very, very strong iron curtain. So my dad got out. He ran away from the country. It was very hard to get out because they keep you in for a reason. You know, there's walls keeping you in, right? As opposed to keeping people out. So it's like it's a whole different paradigm. But so I was always good at math, and so it just naturally I thought, aerospace engineering, that sounds like a really cool major. So I applied to UCLA and got in, but I didn't like it. It was just all math. There was nothing else, just basically calculus and physics, and I kind of wanted to do something else. And so I started exploring anthropology, all sorts of different things. And I landed on nutrition. I've always been interested in nutrition because I could never put on muscle. I wanted to be cool and muscular like the other boys growing up, but I was like skinny, right? So I was trying to figure out, why do I have all this acne all of a sudden? Now I'm 15, 16, and now not only am I skinny, now I have acne. What is going on here? Like, what's wrong with me? So that kind of got me on the right path. And it took a couple years, and I started figuring out my body, what works and what doesn't. Um, then I moved out to Illinois, and I finished, and I changed majors, and the rest is history. But the parallels between the two, there's not a huge number of parallels, maybe just a little bit better ability at some hard sciences, just because of my, math and physics background. Maybe I have a little bit a better understanding. um, when did I figure out that I was helping people? Well, I finished my bachelor's in '99, and so as soon as I got out, I'm like, I'm starting a clinic. So I started this Natural Health and Nutrition Institute in Champaign, Illinois. I got an EIN number and everything, and started working with a couple of different, a chiropractic office, a doctor's office, a nutritionist, and it went okay. I did that part time, while I was going to grad school, and I did feel like I was helping people. However, the point where I realized the limitless potential to help even more people, including like really difficult cases, was not in '99. It was in 2018, and that was when my friend Peter, the one you mentioned, the famous Dr. Peter Diadamo, we've been back and forth ever since '99, actually, and we were working on some things and discussing some projects back in 2014. Anyway, he kept bugging me. He's like, "You just got to come out here to Connecticut. I need to show you this program I wrote." And he just kept going on and on about it, like all the time. And I'm like, "All right, fine. I'm coming out there." So in 2018, 8 years ago, I flew out there. He trained me on it. And it was just like completely mind blowing. I couldn't believe the information you can get, and you can integrate from DNA data, microbiome data, just some simple pieces of information, and you could piece together. It's almost as if you're like some advanced form of an AI program. It was unbelievable. So been doing that ever since.
To me, that opens up so many pathways for communication. And first things first, I just want to acknowledge you for finding something that mattered more to you as you became more curious. And I think curiosity today is going to be a major conversation point for us, because I think if people, Jason sometimes quotes me, this is something that Sachin Patel quoted me saying one time, was, if people know what we know, they do what we do. And I think there's just a lot of people out there that are driving blind, or flying blind, as people say, and they don't know what to do. And their lives aren't getting better. And it's not something that they know how to do. And like, you wanted to gain muscle. Well, most people just want to feel better. And they don't have the rocket science brain, math brain that you have. And they don't have the, the genetic code brain that you have, that you can actually like start to formulate these things. So they're going to be listening to us. So hopefully the things that we share today together will create some curiosity points with the people listening today, and they'll be wanting to see how they can work with you and learn more about you and collaborate with the Get Better Faster message. So I just want to acknowledge you, number one, for finding something that was better for you, and taking a chance, and following a mentor, and learning how to integrate, and being curious with your career, which is obviously something that we're going to talk about today, of how what you're doing has the ability to set the map for people to start finding new parts of their life they didn't know existed, and how to start uncovering ways that they can start to make their lives improve and really help loved ones. Because Jason and I both come from Iowa, and I've always been told that um, if your loved one is sick, you'll sell the farm to save them. And it's a real thing. And we don't have to do that anymore. We can use your strategies without selling at all and figure out how to do it with more strategy and more effective. And I think that that's the cool thing about where we are from 2018 to today is we just have more effective utilization skills. And I know Dr. Jason has his hand up there, so I want to pass over to him. But I just wanted to really set the message to say, be curious, guys. Just because somebody says something to you doesn't mean that that's your life sentence.
Well, thank you for the segue. Actually, that's perfect, because I just wanted to mention too, Dr. Peter Diadamo, for our listeners that might be thinking, I've heard that name before, I think, but who the heck is that guy? He's a very famous writer and doctor. He wrote a book that you might have heard of, Eat Right for Your Blood Type. International bestseller. I mean, sold millions of copies. And now I think he has, boy, I'd have to check out the name, but I think it's Eat Right for, what is it, your genotype, or something like that. So Eat Right for Your Genotype, which is very interesting as well. What I really find interesting, the more, when I first started, I don't even want to say this, but like digging into utilizing genetics with my private clients, my private patients, it was very overwhelming. I do just want to say, and maybe we'll get into this. Sorry. It's really nice to have Val kind of in my back pocket so that I can consult with him on cases. In fact, we're sharing some cases right now. We have one case that comes to my interesting case with pediatric seizures that we're going to get to the bottom of. Val's looking at it from a genetic point of view. I'm looking at it from a functional laboratory point of view, and we're kind of combining our forces there. But some really cool stuff that we can do. But interestingly, when I first started the idea of genetics, like you were saying, Val, for me, it was overwhelming. But then when you start to look at it as code, I mean, and that's what it is ultimately, it really is like an AI or a computer talking to us and telling us secrets about ourselves, secrets that are embedded, deep within our DNA. And I think for a lot of our listeners, before we even get into the hacking of that code or what we can do with that code, I think we need to dispel some myths. And the main myth, I think, is, I've got my genes. Doctors use this crap all the time when they're like, that's familial hypertension or familial obesity or familial this or that, meaning that you've got it in your family. It's in your genes, familial cancers. Everybody's had cancers. So therefore we are determined, I suppose, or predetermined to live up to those genes. As an example, over the last, a little bit over a year and a half, I lost both my father and my brother. My father a little bit more expectedly, but my brother unexpectedly to sudden cardiac arrest, just their hearts stopping. Cardiometabolic disease runs in my family. Hypertension, high cholesterol, prediabetes, diabetes, all that stuff, obesity. It all runs in my family. And it'd be really easy for me to sit back and be like, well, that sucks to be me. Those are the cards I got dealt. I guess I'll be obese and have diabetes and die of sudden cardiac disease early in my life as well. But I think the longer I do what I do and work with, you and learn more about, your perspective, the more I understand that there's a big difference between, I'm going to use some big words here, predeterminism, being predetermined to have something, and then a predisposition to having something. And I think that's really where the magic lies in understanding genes. But Val, can you just walk our audience through the difference between something being predetermined and there being a predisposition to having an inclination of having something, if I'm asking that question the right way?
Yeah. That's very important. So yeah, we should definitely talk about that. So throughout human history, we have had problems, right? Calamities, famines. What is it called when there's no water? I guess it's not a famine; it's a drought. We've had droughts. We've had infectious disease, right? Plague, cholera, all sorts of strange, different bugs, right? Bacteria, viruses, and sometimes it'll kill 5-10% of like an entire city. Other times it'll kill half the city, right? That's insane, imagine the town you're in. Imagine half the people there. That's like ridiculous. Like you can't even fathom it these days. But back in the old days, that was like happening quite often. Like 10%, 20%, 40% of a town or city would just like just disappear. Bubonic plague and all that. So because of all these issues, in addition to war, there have been a lot of stressors on humanity. And so what happens is when a big stress happens, humanity adjusts, and these are not genetic changes. You don't like have a mutation because the neighboring village attacks your village. That's not how it works, right? What happens is there's two things. One is let's say you have a spectrum of athletic ability in a village, right? And then village A fights village B, right? Then all the people who maybe are not as athletically skilled, they die off because in the battle, you're probably more likely to win if you have better athletics. But then in the following 100 or 200 years, the people who have better athletics probably also have more muscle mass, more metabolism. They're eating more food. And so maybe that is not enough for everybody, So it's a matter of, it's like a balance. If everyone is super strong and big and athletic, that's great. But what if there's some starvation? So humans adapt. So there's epigenetic changes and genetic changes. Genetic changes is there's some new mutations or the wrong mutations, like people who have obesity genetics nowadays. But back then it was if you had the real skinny genetics, right? You died off. Maybe not all of you, but you're more likely to. So over time, right, where there's more famine or food insecurity, people are generally going to they're going to have more obesity genetics. Where there's more food or stable food supply, then there's going to be less of that. But then there's also epigenetics. So you like have some kind of battle and that affects all the kids and then their kids and their kids, right? 2, 3, 4 generations, and then it gets back to normal. So if you can imagine a period of time where there wasn't any craziness. So let's imagine like in China, right? There were periods of time in China, 1, 2, 3,000 years ago, where you did have like 1, 2, 300 years, right, of nothing huge, no huge issues. Same thing with, Pax Romana, right? When there was great peace or relative peace in the Roman Empire, somewhere around, I don't know, 200-300 AD. So go ahead.
No, go, keep going. That's just for me.
Okay. So when these things happen, then the epigenetics goes away of the stress and everyone's having like a normal life. But then if stressors happen, battle, disease, famine, drought, then there's all these stressors just so we could survive. And usually it causes like extra obesity or it causes PTSD in a couple of future generations. But that's so you could survive the stress, right? So if a kid in Somalia has obesity epigenetics, he wants that because there's food insecurity. That helps him survive, having like, having a really low metabolism, the ability to absorb any calorie and store it as muscle and fat. You want that if you're a kid growing up in Somalia. Whereas if you're a kid growing up in a small town in Iowa, you probably want the opposite because there's too much food and now you're getting heart disease and diabetes.
Val, you just took my whole talking point away. So thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, what I would say is it's interesting that when you were talking, I started thinking about, I'm going to use a big word here, guys, aromatization, right? And in hormone, functional hormone health, we talk about the conversion of hormones, not just do you have enough hormones, but how are they working together as a concert? So as an example, progesterone, which everybody knows about, can convert into things like testosterone, which can then aromatize or convert into estrogens. And it's interesting because estrogen, as an example, insulin, another example, these hormones do help with caloric storage. I mean, they really do. So if we go back not very many far, you said you studied anthropology a little bit. I was actually in grad school for anthropology for a hot minute. It's a whole separate life that I had, researching things like the fall of smallhold farms in Ireland in the early 2000s, and just interesting stuff. But anyway, beyond not so interesting. But anyway, back to anthropology. Back not even very long ago, a couple hundred years ago, we didn't have the food, the calories available to us that we have today. There was a caloric shortage. I mean, food's always a commodity, but having a lot of food or a lot of calories was not common. So people that had developed those genetics to survive through leaner times, maybe they were better I don't know if better is the right word. They were better at aromatizing or creating estrogens. Maybe they were better at an insulin release. Those hormones help store calories during those lean times. But like you mentioned, now in Iowa or anywhere in the US, we're a 5-minute walk to any, corner convenience gas station. And, for $10, you can just about buy as many calories and Twinkies as you want, right? I mean, and we have an overabundance of calories, not necessarily good calories. We're not talking nutrition at this point, everybody. We're just talking about calories. And the problem with that is, as you mentioned, in a place like Somalia, where there's food insecurity, which we take for granted in the United States. I mean, I think we talk about poverty in the United States. Anyone that's traveled around, poverty in other countries is very, very different than in the majority of the United States. What we call poor and poverty here is very different than what we see in other countries like Somalia. So in these areas of food insecurity, someone having those genetics that would lead them to have more estrogens to store calories, more insulin to store calories, that's survival. So those people that survive, they get to pass on their genes to the next generation and so on. We are all products of people that survive those lean times. But now they take that survival, that constructive survival value, if you will, of being able to survive through a lean time, plunk us in with the epigenetics to store calories in an area where there's abundance of calories. It's no wonder that in the United States, this is according to the CDC, I think it's 74 point change, but 75% of us are obese or overweight in the United States. And it's over 40% of that tally that's actually obese. We have an obesity epidemic. It's not just what people are eating, but it's literally the genetics that we're born into. So again, there's this idea of predeterminism. If we go back to my question, that our genetics can, to a certain extent, our epigenetics sort of determine the way our body responds. But the cool thing is, I'm going to bring it back to a predisposition. When we have the knowledge base working with someone like Val and genetic well-being, when someone understands, hey, you know what? My body metabolizes those calories differently, or my body might metabolize, we can get really specific. I think we'll dive into this if we can. My body metabolizes protein efficiently, but not carbohydrates efficiently, or fat efficiently, but not proteins efficiently, and et cetera. We can really start to hone in on what diets are actually constructive to the survival of your genes, of yourself. Val, did I say that right? Looking at predeterminism, people that survive with various epigenetics and genetics, but predisposition, we can actually make choices now based on our genetics and epigenetics so that we can not only survive, but thrive and then pass on our genes to the next generation. Am I speaking?
Oh yeah, you're totally on the money.
Okay.
You're exactly right. So there's two levels to it. One is you should probably eat more like your ancestors, since the ancestors that you're eating more like are the ones who survived. So in other words, your great grandmother survived, and then that's how you're here. But let's say she had a sister, your great aunt, and she died when she was 4 because she had some mutation which you needed more protein or carbs or vitamin A or vitamin C or whatever, and she just didn't make it. So you're if you go back, I forgot what the number is, but I know it's log based too. You go back like 12 generations, it's like over 4,000 people that are all related to you on your tree of genealogy. And then all of those kind of boil down to you. So you're like the elite of your entire generation, right? You're like the best of the best. That's you're the result of all the natural selection and everything. So people like to hear. They're like, yeah,
I like that.
sense. Unless you're on the other side of the Leary circle, where you're like the pessimist. You're like, yeah, I probably am at the bottom end of that. So it depends if you're optimist or pessimist. But really, regardless of that level of leeriness, pun intended, it's true. It's very true. Go ahead, Jim.
Well, you guys have a lot of high level knowledge skill when it comes to understanding, like I was talking about earlier, the smallest part of how it has a reaction inside of the human body, from what we're eating, from our genealogy. Like those are pretty broad swaths of like thought process for most people. And I know most people are just kind of like very interested and curious about, what did my great grandparents do for work? When did they come over to America? And those are usually the typical lines of interest that people have when it comes down to where the heck they came from and what did the people look like? Can I find photos of them? And Darwinism, survival of the fittest is one of those things that I studied when I was younger. I was very interested in like the Galapagos and how people actually like how they could have so many different species of like different birds on such a and they were so connected but so different. And I think that about people a lot too. You're using like Africa versus Midwest America. And I think when you start thinking about this terrain theory idea that we are products of how we eat and how we live and in our environments and the relationships that we have, like that all boils down to what you study in the DNA strand, which I think is quite curious. And we want to talk about, I guess, sustainability models within funding and keeping people healthy. And I was just telling Jason when he came to town a couple nights ago, we're now starting to see that people's life expectancy is shorter than it used to be, which, well, what is that going to tell 3 generations from now or 5 generations from now that go back and study us and they don't know who we were or why we existed or what we were feeding ourselves or what we were injecting in ourselves? None of that's going to be relevant to them. Only thing that's relevant to them is, why did life expectancy start to get shorter? So they're going to be looking under the microscope per se. Why did people start to live shorter at this tree ring of life? And I think that those are all curious moments for me from what you guys are sharing to like the person that has whatever condition that we're going to, dangle the carrot for, whether it's athletic performance, whether it's how we can help people with different conditions like obesity, whether it's we can help other people with different conditions that aren't predetermined. They're all lifestyle, like cancer, and it's all environmental. And I think people always used to say that you guys were talking about earlier is, oh, it's just in my genes, it runs in the family. Yeah. So does like being dumb. And I think if people are more curious and think about where their dollars go and think about the system that they've been hook, line, and sinkered into, my big question why I'm going on this whole positioning statement and this whole curiosity moment that I'm sharing is, what is conventional medical? What is the conventional medicine system missing with chronic illness? And I want to go further steps. So I'm not going to ask the whole like shot at the moment, because I do want to continue this conversation further on beyond this one moment, because I'm interested in mental health and I'm interested in addiction. So I want to make sure that I'm getting it all out right now, because I think that this is going to be a conversation for this episode that's going to help a lot of people, not just understanding what their Opus 23 readings are, but why they are living the life that they have today, and how we can change that to make sure that in 5 generations down the line, when people go and investigate why this quality of life started to drop, what was happening and what we can do today to make these people's quantity of life and quality of life go back to a betterment rather than a deterioration and something declining. Because nobody ever wants to celebrate the decline, but we have to talk about that. And that's where we are today. We're not at a thriving moment. We're at actually a very critical moment where we could go for population collapse if we don't fix the food. We could go for population collapse if we don't fix the water. And there's a lot of things that are environmental focused right now that aren't as good as they were when I was born 47 years ago. So, that being said, with what you're studying and where you've come from 1999 to today, where is the mainstream medical system? I'm not saying point fingers, but where are they missing the mark when it comes to chronic illness and cost of keeping people healthy?
Yeah, that's a very those are very good questions. Where are they missing the mark, and what is wrong? I kind of like I'm imagining Benjamin Buford Blues in Forrest Gump, a movie that I was in. I was an extra in that movie.
Nice.
When Bubba goes, he goes like, "Why did this happen, Forrest?" As he's dying, like, what is going on? Like, why is this happening? So without getting too conspiratorial, let's just call it super greed, that companies know certain compounds are really not that healthy, but they withhold information, just like like the recent thing with glyphosate, right? Farmers need it because they'll lose money short term. Long term, maybe they won't need it, because anyway, glyphosate has a shelf life. It's not going to survive forever. There's already different weeds that are resistant. They're starting to build resistance to it. So it's not like it's going to be around forever. But yeah, in general, it's not good for people. There are certain things it does, reduces bifido levels in your GI tract, other bacteria, messes with tight junctions, et cetera, et cetera. Dr. Seneff had a nice article, and I'm sure you guys know about all of her work with work on glyphosate. I haven't talked to her in over a year. I don't know what she's doing right now, but there's a lot of people pushing, what do we do to get rid of all this crap? Yellow number 5 or red dye 40. So I think that it's a lot of greed in big ag and politics. I don't think they care. They want to make the most money possible. But in addition to that, yeah, there's an intentional obfuscation of data and facts, and things get buried, and there's lawsuits, et cetera, et cetera. So I really think the future lies in dealing with temporary issues like glyphosate, like 2,4-D, paraquat, malaquat. There's a million quats, all these different compounds, pesticides, insecticides, herbicides, other chemicals, organophosphates. You have to deal with it in the short term. I think in the long term, they're not going to be around that much longer in our food supply. They're going to go down. It's already happened in Europe, and Europe is okay. People are eating there, right? They're not starving to death, so it's not going to drastically change all grain production. For the time being, you want to take the amino acid glycine, because glyphosate is an analog of glycine. So if you take like 1 or 2 grams of glycine a day, it'll be harder for your body to absorb and incorporate glyphosate into different cells, to absorb it into the bloodstream, et cetera. I think that helps a lot. The more fiber you consume, the more it helps reduce absorption of these compounds. So eat more fruits and vegetables. And then what does the average American do? Eats a bunch of processed foods.
Mm-hmm.
A bunch of processed foods has no water, no fiber, or low water, low fiber, which is the exact opposite. So in a way, I think people, even if there's pesticides on fresh fruits and vegetables, maybe peel some of the fruits and vegetables where you're like oranges, you're not eating the peel. Even though I occasionally like to eat a little bit of it to get the orange oil, to get the those essential oils. But if you do that, it's actually better for you. Even though it has pesticides, it's probably better for you. But anyway,
I want to jump in and I'll pass to Dr. Jason. I'm going to synthesize this and make it real simple for people to understand. If you eat food that's not food, and you eat chemicals on your food, your health and your quality of life will show under the microscope.
yeah.
I'll quote you earlier, James. What is it? Play stupid games, win stupid prizes, right? I mean, if you're eating Frankenfoods that you can't even pronounce, the chemicals that are in there. I mean, what do you think what's in your body? I mean, you're gonna get a stupid prize playing that stupid game. Also, man, there's so much to unpack here, Val. Thank you for sharing all of that. When you were talking about, I don't even know. I'm just gonna say this. I'm not gonna be conspiratorial, but recently, and I know our show is going to air a few months from now, but right now, we are in a space where there was an executive order that was just passed to increase the production of glyphosate, here in the United States for national security. And I want people to understand that this is bullshit. I want to be very clear about this. What they're really talking about is protecting the income of the average farmer. And I think also I want to clarify for our listeners, when we're talking about the average farmer, we're not talking about, old farmer Joe down the street anymore that has a few acres. We're talking about corporate farms. We're talking about large, many thousands and thousands of acres, these corporate farms that might be contracted out to people like Farmer Joe to work for them. But ultimately, it's corporate farms. And what we're doing is that executive order was passed specifically to protect the income of these large corporations that own large swaths of the farmland in the United States. Now, what do we use glyphosate for? We use it for grain, either production and or finishing, right? It is a pesticide to a certain extent. It does help with yield, and it does help with money per acre as far as that yield goes. They do spray it on the crops at the end of the crop life to help it dry, to help increase the yield, again, of what we can pull out of those crops. And we're ultimately talking about money. This isn't about national security. It's about money for large corporations. That's what this deal was all about. I'll until proven otherwise, that's what it stands for. Now, the thing is, we all know, and even, our leader of the Maha movement, RFK Jr., has won lawsuits against the then Monsanto, now Bayer Corporation, that makes glyphosate in the tune of like $250 million. Other lawsuits against Monsanto, now Bayer, have been over $1 billion due to lymphomas and other types of cancers that have been related to glyphosate and being around glyphosate. So unfortunately, the people that win these lawsuits aren't around anymore because they're dead. They died of cancer. So, I mean, we know it's not like, oh my God, we all really need glyphosate for national security, for our health. That's a bunch of bullshit. It's to protect corporate interests in corporate farms, high yield per acre. And that's really where the glyphosate story comes from. So there's that piece of it. I just wanted to clarify that. That's not conspiratorial. That's just real.
Can I interject and pass it back to you?
Please, yeah, do.
So what Dr. Jason is saying, this isn't your neighborhood community farmer that we're talking about. This isn't the mom and pop's shop. This is the Walmart of farming big ag. So this isn't something that you think about the idealistic guy with overalls and a John Deere tractor that raises chickens and pigs and that has sheep and soybeans and corn and strawberries and berries and things that are grown in rows that support the local farm. No, these are the Walmart farmers. These are the people that they don't care what's on the produce or what's inside of the animals that we eat. They only care about, are the shareholders making money within the business that we sold out from the mom and pops of the idealistic farm that we grew up around in Iowa, where the farmers would actually go before they would till the fields. They would go have cups of coffee and they'd have discussions about what seeds they're planting this year and what a bushel's selling for, and share like real farming lifestyle together. That culture doesn't exist anymore, guys. I'm just going to let you know, you might shed a tear, but that culture doesn't exist anymore. And the people that are putting food in these grocery stores and that you're putting on your table, they don't give a shit about you. And that's why we're in the mess that we're in.
We are in that mess. And I'll just say, unless you're fortunate enough to go to a farmer's market and meet the farmer and know the farmer and know where it's coming from, and you have that whole lineage. In fact, I've quoted this before, but I had a patient 20 plus years ago that was a farmer here in Iowa, or I guess I'm in Colorado right now, but in Iowa. He since has moved to Hawaii. And that he had a really good quote. He's like, I think in the future, we'll be choosing our farmers like we choose our doctors now. And I think that that's really important because we have to know that lineage, that story of the food that we're eating. The other thing I wanted to say about the grain yield, because we're talking about grains. And again, this all comes kind of on the heels also of, quote, inverting the food pyramid, when instead of having the bottom of the food pyramid, grains, as put out by the USDA, the United States Department of Agriculture, who, again, I want to be very clear, is not a medical department. It is its whole point, the United States Department of Agriculture, the whole point of it is to sell American agriculture. That's it. So what do we produce in America? We produce a lot of grains. So when they created the old food pyramid with the grains at the bottom, all they're saying is we better sell those grains. That's what we have an abundance of. And I want to talk about abundance because right now, with the current production that we're protecting for national security, we actually produce almost 200% of the necessary grains, whatever that word even means, for the entire US population. If everyone was adamantly in that food pyramid eating all those grains, we actually still have 200% production of grains in the United States. And so what are we really producing or protecting? We're protecting those corporate farms' ability to sell internationally. It's not even about the US population. This is literally about multinational corporate farming companies and their ability to produce high yields at the cost of who? At the cost of the health of the American consumer, the American citizens, getting that cancer-causing glyphosate into their, James, like you said, food supply, water supply, all of it. And we wonder why we're so, gosh darn sick. There, see, I edited myself. We wonder why we're so sick. It's because of these interests that we had to sign an executive order to protect. James, go ahead.
Well, I want to go back and focus on Val because I know that we're both fired up about these topics.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah. But
I agree with everything you guys said.
But Val, you're seeing the downstream effect of it because you're studying the human DNA strands that are affected by these decisions of big business over the individual's health. And that's why I opened up with that question is, what is the number one thing the conventional medical system is getting wrong about chronic illness? Well, all those things that we just like powder kegged and discussed are the reasons why we're seeing the chronic health problems. But then they go one step further. What Jason said is they over yield on the grains. And what do? We tell people eat more protein. Well, what are they doing? They're feeding glyphosate laden corn and soybeans to the protein that are produced, even sold as organic, that we all think that is okay and safe for us to eat. And then that is back to what I've been told for 17 years since I've been in the chiropractic. We are what we eat, but no, we are what we eat eats. So the cycle of life goes even further down the line to know that what we're eating might be something of good choice, but we're still eating what it ate and what it took as a medicine, or what it took as an injection, or what it took as a quality of water source, or what it took as a quality of epigenetic living condition. So we can talk about all these things, but if you're not actually giving people good quality product from the way that we think, the way that we behave, and the way that we eat, and the way that we drink, and what we live in, and how we're healthy, then we're going to have a continuum of this conversation with Val for the next decade and beyond. Every time he comes on the show, we're going to have more conversations of the system that we're all, I guess, lined up into, where there's not many solutions for. but I do want to get to solution time within the next 45 minutes with him, because I think he's going to share some forecasting and some outcomes that people might be really curious in for their children and for themselves when it comes to real life conditions that they drive around with every day in their lives, their personal lives, that sits on their couches, that sits at the tables with them, who are the people that they love and themselves, which is the real underlying things of what I believe Val is working on, is helping people with cancer, helping people with addiction, helping people with performance, and helping people with different things that the mass majority of people are hot button topics for them. So we're talking about all of like the junk drawer situation of life, like what's in the junk drawer. Well, all of that, everything we just discussed for the past 45 minutes. But now let's switch the conversation to more solutions. So Val, after Jason and I have been like firing off like mad journalists, what are some solution based observations that you've picked up from what both of us are sharing that you can share with our audience?
Solution based. That's very important. That's probably where the answer lies in the short term, because I can't snap my fingers and make all the glyphosate go away, and neither can you guys. We can discuss it, and we can elect people and use our dollars, to buy from this company over that company, and that actually is very powerful in the long term. But what can you do now? So anyone can go into any Google search or any kind of search, DuckDuckGo, and put in the worst foods that have the most chemicals. And those are usually because you eat the peel as well. So like I think strawberries are in there. It's like the worst 12. It's like grape, strawberries. So you could look at those, and you could try to eat less of those and try to buy organic when it comes to those types of foods. And then the foods that are not on that list. Oh, by the way, I remember the name. It's the Dirty Dozen.
Yep.
I'm sure you've heard of it. So try to eat less Dirty Dozen, but more organic Dirty Dozen. And then if the fruit or vegetable is not on that list, then that's less important to eat organic because you're not eating the peel. So
I'll just interject really quickly too for our listeners. That's put together by the Environmental Working Group, and we'll have a link to the Dirty Dozen, and they also have the Clean 15. Just to kind of clarify, they have a dozen foods where they're like, do not eat these foods unless you're getting it like really organic, because it's really bad for you. And then they have a Clean 15 that's basically like, oh, you should be eating these, and if you have to err on the side of not getting organic, please get organic anyway. But if you can't get it, these 15 foods are a little bit safer. And it's exactly what Val's saying. It's do you peel the food or not? Yeah, thank you, Val.
Sure. Another thing that you can do is supplement with glycine, which I talked about a few minutes ago. Glycine is an analog to glyphosate. In fact, that's how it works to kill weeds, because then weeds don't process. It's even more toxic to weeds than it is to us. So the weeds absorb the glyphosate and then think it's glycine and then start making proteins with glyphosate, and it just doesn't work as well. Anyway, so that's another one. Eating more fruits and vegetables in general is another one. Eating more fiber is another one. It's a big deal. I would say eating less chicken and more turkey. So turkey seems to be a little bit healthier fats, maybe a little bit less pesticides, et cetera, than chicken. Red meat, if it's lean and or grass-fed, is supposed to be better for you. And if you don't have as much stomach acid, there's things you could do to increase your stomach acid, right? And maybe eat smaller amounts once in a while. Although I really do think some people should avoid red meats. But it does have a lot of benefits to those who can handle it.
I'm going to jump in right here because it's a perfect question. Coming back to solutions. Thank you, James, by the way, for pulling me off my diatribe. I would stand on a corner with a bullhorn and talk about this, and people would be like, that crazy guy talking about the corruption of our FDA and the food industry and the drug industry and all that. I am that crazy guy. I'm so thankful for this podcast to do my catharsis and my armchair psychology. Thank you guys for being my armchair psychologist. On that, back to solutions. Talking about, You said in passing, I do think there's some people that shouldn't eat red meat. I do think that we might want to lean more toward turkey. I do think this or that. Can genetics tell us what diet is best for us? You know, for me, for my wife, for my kids. Can we run genetics and they'll say, you know what the best diet for you is? Mediterranean or carnivore or vegetarian or vegan, or can genetics tell us those things?
Absolutely. So it's not perfect, but it is way better than we had before. So in the past, there was like the first gene associated with obesity is called FTO. The FTO gene has a specific SNP. There's actually 7, 8 different SNPs. They're all somewhat connected to each other. They're like linked. So you pass 2, 3, 4, sometimes all of them off at the same time. So that was the first SNP that was like really, really connected to high protein diets being good for you versus being bad for you for weight loss. So people who had the A allele, especially both copies, they did really well on a higher protein, lower fat diet. But the funny thing is, it had nothing to do with anything else but satiety. It was only related to satiety. So this gene has a SNPs that if you have the certain ones, you're just not as satisfied. And of course, what increases satiety? More protein. So that's why you'll do better on that. So it does work for losing weight. And then they found other ones. There's a SNP, a TCF7L2, which is like the farmer versus hunter-gatherer SNP. The SNP is in, it basically makes it so you have like a rev limiter on your pancreas. It can't put out more insulin. It only puts out this much insulin. And if you have more blood sugar, well, you're shit out of luck. You're not getting any more insulin. This is the max. Whereas the average person can do a lot, right? So if you have that, it's actually the #1 diabetes SNP in the entire genome. It's this one SNP. So if you have that, you're going to have to like try to like eat a healthier diet and lower glycemic carbs. Eat a little bit lower in fat. So there's certain things you could do based on these SNPs, and there's a whole bunch of them. There's ApoE, the Alzheimer's gene. It's like if you have the Alzheimer's gene, you should eat this way, and if you eat in a certain way, you don't even get Alzheimer's. You'll have a reduced risk than the person who doesn't even have the genetic risk, which is mind-boggling. Like I talk to people all the time, right? I have like appointments all week, different genetic analysis. I've probably done 1,700 different analyses the last decade. I don't know anyone else who's done that. And every time we get into the Alzheimer's, about 20% of people, they go, I don't want to know. Don't tell me if I have it. And I'm like, what are you talking about? It's a celebration because you have it and you're not going to get it because you're going to do things a certain way. And it's just a whole different mindset,
I love where you're taking us, Val, but I have to like ask you to continue this, do this, don't do that method. I love it because I think it's really actionable for people to understand this. And I think it's very clear. We're getting to the moment of clarity in today's episode, which I'm really thankful for, the solution-based analysis of like, we told people where the problem is. Now we're coming to what are the next things. And I tell people all the time, just because you think the supplement's good for you, maybe all it's doing is creating an expensive pee. And just because the doctor prescribes you a medication doesn't mean it's good for you. All it might be doing is creating expensive pee. Or it might not actually be like fixing the solution, because I believe what we've done in the medical world is we lack curiosity once we get a diagnosis, and we lack curiosity when it comes to results. And we're working off of conveyor belt technology minds and brains, where we've moved into AI world where we get more relevant, like you said, 1,700 cases, like things that you're actually looking into and helping people find solutions for. I'm going to ask you a question off of our printout that's very specific. I told you I was going to ask this question before we start today's episode, but this is the expert insight question. And we can use my terminology of create an expensive pee, with medicine or with supplements, but you've worked with pharmacogenomics, as we've been talking about. The idea that your genes determine how you respond to medications.
Yes.
How many people right now are on drugs that their body literally cannot metabolize properly? And what should they know?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So let's look at some of the top, most common, most impactful drugs. And I'm not talking about like insulin. Like if you're a type 1 diabetic, you need insulin. That's a drug. That's a very common drug, but you need it, right? Let's start with statins. Some people respond better to statins than others. Some people respond better to statins than others regarding whether your cholesterol go down. But there's a whole other type of responding to statins, like getting a bad reaction, like having muscle pain and other health issues. So those are two different questions. Do statins lower my cholesterol? Yes or no? And am I getting side effects? So if you have the genetics where you have no side effects or reduced risk of side effects, and you have the genetics where it does, you have the SNPs where it does reduce your cholesterol, then maybe statins are not as bad for you. But if statins are not as bad for you, why don't you just use red yeast rice, which is the natural form of it anyway? It's not as potent, but you could just take a little more, and it usually works fine. So you could have that as an alternative. But but if you have genetic problems with statins, sometimes you'll also have, to an extent, genetic problems with red yeast rice too. So it's important to know that. For things like Adderall, you can have the addiction. I created a novel panel for Adderall addiction. I did that a few months ago, and I've been testing my patients on it. It's a genetic panel, and if you have that, you're more likely to get hooked on Adderall, which is a big deal. Also, you can have side effects. So addiction risk is one issue. Side effect is another issue. And then whether it works or not is another issue. So if all the pieces line up, maybe Adderall can help some people, but at the same time, there are substitutes that you should be trying anyway to help reduce ADHD or whatever else you're trying to do. I would say those two are probably like two of the biggest ones, right? Statins and amphetamines.
Well, it's not just creating expensive pee; it's ruining lives.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and I think that that's the other counterbalance of the genius that we bring to the show, is we can ask those open questions to get experts like yourself to talk about, but then it opens up a bigger question, and that is, I wrote it down. Let me go back to it, and then I'll pass the mic over to Dr. Jason because his hand's up too. But the future of genetics and concierge health protocols. Where are we going now that we can understand that some of the things that are being prescribed to people that aren't actually functional for them, and there's other solutions for them and other ways to get what they need without going to the orange pill bottle. So what would you say is the future of genetics and concierge health protocols?
In my opinion, this year is going to really, really redefine wellness, integration of labs, patient history, family history, genetics, microbiome. All of that's going to change this year. By the end of this year, it'll be somewhat recognizable, but not much. There'll be a lot of changes, especially in the concierge subspecialties. For 2027 and 2028, you will see all this knowledge start to get boiled down and filter into allopathic medicine. Allopathic medicine is not totally going to change in 2026, even though all of us want it to, right? it's still going to be what it is, but it is going to start changing because it can't avoid it.
Well, I want Dr. Jason to jump back into this conversation, but I will say in the near future, we're going to look at the pharmaceutical industry as the snake oil salesman. And
Yeah.
we're going to look at them and think that they've lost their damn minds and they didn't do the right things for our culture and our people. And not to say that I want to put a target on anybody, but I've seen firsthand how my family suffered from the drug industry, whether it be alcohol or tobacco. And most people just think of the drug industry as the pharmaceutical, like pharmacy stuff. But really, the drug culture is the alcohol and it is the big tobacco. And now those people are in cahoots with big ag. So it all comes full circle. And now I'm going to pass it back to Dr. Jason.
Well, and they're in cahoots with the food industry as well. It's why it's called the Food and Drug Administration, right? I mean, it's the same companies. I mean, let's just be real. The other thing, just to play on that, and then I'm going to come back to what we were talking about. The industry itself is not geared to get us well. I mean, I think this is the big thing that I think we need to think about. The Flexner Report was published in 1910. For those of us that are listening, that are like, what the heck is the Flexner Report? It's when the Rockefellers and the people that own the petroleum companies had all this extra petroleum. They knew they could make novel chemicals out of it that could have certain biological effects or AKA patent medicines. And they had more money than we even understand people to have money with. And they decided to see how they could get doctors to recommend their patented petroleum-based medicines, which are what we're still experiencing today. So they hired this guy named Flexner, who said, it's really easy, just fund the schools like crazy, but give them all the latest lab equipment and all the, latest technology and whatever it happens to be, more money than they know what to do with it. Make the medical schools very powerful, but make a deal with them and say, you cannot teach natural medicines anymore. You cannot teach it anymore. And, Rockefeller said, well, what happens to all the doctors that are out there that already learned all that? And Flexner was like, oh, they're dinosaurs. They will all die off eventually. That was in 1910. We're in, 2026 now, and it's been over 100 years. And Big Pharma has had over 100 years to prove to us that they help us be healthy. And, we are our small little 5% of the world population in the United States, we consume upwards of 75-80% of the world's pharmaceuticals. And we are the sickest westernized country on the planet. I mean, if pharmaceuticals were the solution to health, we would be the healthiest country on the planet. We would be saying, oh, James, you're only taking 14 drugs. Man, I take 38 drugs. Look how healthy I am. It's completely absurd when you think about it. And I don't even know another industry that's had 100+ years to prove itself to the population and fail so miserably and still be protected by the powers that be. And again, guys, this all comes back to economy. And again, this is my journalism coming out. Thank you for the catharsis. I appreciate it. Coming back to what Val was saying, that in the next few years, we're going to be redefining what it means to, the patient experience, I think is what I boiled that down to. Our technology, our understanding is changing. A lot of times, as technology changes, it does take in history. I mean, maybe things will be different now because of the speed of technology, but often it's taken decades to see it translate into, we now know something in the private sector, so to speak. We translate that into medical school training. All the textbooks have to be changed. All the curriculum has to be changed. Then we start putting out doctors in training. And I mean, it can take 10, 20 years. And in fact, there's an argument that the technology changes so much so right now that those doctors going through training, the stuff that they're learning in their first year of their doctor's school, by the time they're in their fourth year of their doctor's school, is already outdated, right? I mean, so technology changes very, very quickly. And this is where I come back to one of the bigger problems also with conventional medicine is, James, you said it, we get the diagnosis and then curiosity stops, right? That's what we're trained. What's the diagnosis? Oh, if I have the diagnosis, then I know how to treat it, because everybody with that diagnosis gets this series of drugs. It might be one or the other, or it might be, this surgery or this procedure, or referred to these people. But once you have that diagnosis, for the most part, this is the way it's trained, the drop down menus in the electronic health records tell the doctor what to do next, and it's usually drug, refer, procedure. It's not any deeper than that. Gone are the days of the Marcus Welby MDs that are going to, really care about the why. Why does someone have that diagnosis? And I mean this out of love. Any flippin' monkey can come up with what the diagnosis is. I mean, I can't stand it when people, will come to me and say, well, it took me 10 years, but finally I got the diagnosis of chronic fatigue. And I'm like, what the hell does that mean? Or fibromyalgia or whatever I'm like, chronic fatigue is like, did you go and be like, I've been tired for a long time? And like, you know what I think you have? I think you have chronic fatigue syndrome. Or, my muscles sure are sore. And do these points hurt? Yeah. You know what? You've got fibromyalgia, which is just fibers and muscles that hurt. I mean, we make up these names, we make up diagnoses that sound super smart and add syndrome to it. But the reality is it's just a banal explanation of the symptoms that they're having so that we can attach a pharmaceutical drug to it that hopefully is going to lower their symptoms enough and not kill them in the meantime. I was lucky enough last September to preview my upcoming TED Talk called The N of One. And in research studies, we always talk about the N of a study. Like if, we hear about large scale studies that looked at 250,000 people, these meta-analyses, right? That N would be 250,000 people. A small study might have an N of, a dozen people or an N of 6 people, right? I am an advocate of an N of 1. You are your study. Every single human being on this planet is unique. What applies, I mean, there's going to be overlap. I mean, unless the alien disclosure comes out that changes this, I mean, I think we're all humans, at least to some extent. That was a joke, everybody. Although maybe not. We'll see. We'll see what happens. It's a maybe situation, right? But nonetheless, we're all humans. There's going to be overlap, but ultimately, James is going to need something different than me, than Val, than my wife, than my kids, as far as their specific diet, as far as their specific nutrient needs. Val mentioned earlier SNPs, single nucleotide polymorphisms. I call those genetic glitches. Our glitches are going to be different, but there's ways to work around them, and they're all going to be unique. And in my humble opinion, after doing 2.5+ decades of laboratory medicine, we can figure a lot out. I'm going to quote James. He's like, if you give Dr. Bradley, what do you say? Your shit, your piss, your blood, and your spit, or whatever. I don't know, whatever. He can figure anything out about you, And again, that's James' quote, right? But the reality is, genetics is the game changer. I mean, we can figure a whole lot out with laboratory medicine, and we can do advanced laboratory diagnostics. We can do pattern analysis and put things together. But the ultimate, what's the N factor of Val? What is Val's needs? It's genetics. There's nothing on this planet that we have yet available today that I know of that can get to the crux of that quicker than just doing a genetic profile. And the cool thing is that, way back when George Church at the Harvard Human Genome Project and people running full genome analyses, I mean, it was thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to get this done. Rachel and I had it done. We were early adopters. But Val, you're doing these at Genetic Wellbeing for hundreds of dollars, and it's actually so affordable that I am hoping and praying for the day that this becomes the standard of care of, we need to get your genetics before we prescribe a pharmaceutical. We need to know how your body metabolizes that drug. We need to know if your body needs, more vitamin D, or if you're a poor methylator and need more, methylated B vitamins instead of regular B vitamins. I mean, we can get hyper specific with all of that. And it's literally a buccal swab, or a spit test, or however the genetic company's doing it. James, go ahead, and then we'll pass it over to Val.
Yeah, this question's for both of you guys. And I think that you primed the pump really well on that, Dr. Bradley. But my first question, and then I'll follow it up. I know we don't have a whole lot of time left today, but how do we stop rewarding bad behavior and methods in the medical professionals?
I have an answer. Reward outcomes. I mean, honestly, if we paid doctors in the healthcare world on how many drugs they got patients off of, and actually good, healthy outcomes, as opposed to what currently people are paid with, which is either just a contract, Either way, you're either going to have a paid contract that's going to have a certain amount of expectations, or you're going to be paid on something called relative value units. That's really what they're called, guys, RVUs. Right now, clinicians, hospitalists, et cetera, are paid on relative value units. How expensive can you make that patient? Literally, how oh shoot, guys, 1 second. Sorry about that. How expensive can we make that patient encounter? How many expensive drugs can I recommend? How many expensive procedures can I recommend? Because that's making money for the bottom line, for the hospital, for the clinic, for the doctor, him or herself. When we take away payment based on, in my opinion, based on RVUs, and we instead base it on how inexpensive did you make that healthcare and still get really good outcomes? How many drugs were you able to take that patient off of because you worked with their genomics and helped them with the right diet, with the right, supplements, et cetera? That's how I think it's going to change. And right now, there's no incentive for that. We could talk about it all day long. There is nobody proposing that at an administration level. Val, go ahead.
That's why I asked.
Yeah, I totally agree. No one's proposing it. Right now, the way it's happening is just by word of mouth. You're having great success with Mrs. Jones, and Mrs. Jones tells her 2 sisters, and then they tell 7 people, and that's how it works. But eventually, there's going to have to be some kind of revolution. I mean, we're getting to the precipice where people have just had enough with the disease of Western medicine.
Well, I'll tell you, the reason it hasn't shifted gears yet, probably because no one's ever asked that question in the history of journalism until today. And I think that that's a major step forward, is we're actually having this conversation on a nationally, globally syndicated show that's actually talking about things that nobody else has the courage to step into the game and actually discuss with people that have the wherewithal to give the solution answer. So I appreciate both of those responses. And this question is really a tee up for you, Val. I'm really curious, who is your ideal patient? Who is your ideal client? And how do those people find you?
I only have 2 ideal patients. One is the patient where everyone else has given up on them, and those are my favorite because, all hope is lost. So really, they have nothing to lose. Remember, what do you have to lose? Remember that? So what do you have to lose? There's no problem. So it's a combination of things that work and hope. So placebo effect is a big deal, but you also need it to work. You can't just rely on placebo, even though you should push and explain to the patient, especially if they have high placebo effect genetics, which is associated with this gene called TPH2, which makes serotonin, which eventually you make serotonin with it, and also COMT, the COMP gene. So anyway, some people have very high placebo effect. So what I tell these people, I'm like, look, you could make whatever I tell you, you could make or break it with your belief because you have such a high placebo effect genomic profile. Whereas others, like this guy I was talking to a few years ago, he had the lowest placebo effect genetics I've ever measured. Like every single SNP in that panel was like, no. So I told him, I said, you don't really have to believe me. I know it's going to work, but you just do this for like 2 months. And he did it. He's like, I feel better and better. Like, it's amazing what you did. And I knew it wasn't going to really affect him as far as placebo, but yeah, that's a big deal. I wanted to get back briefly to the chemicals and pesticides and grains and the inverted pyramid. I think it's important for people to know that part of the reason people are unhealthy is because there's too many grains in general. And if you go back and you look at Neolithic societies, like there was no glyphosate back when the pharaohs were in charge of Egypt, right? But they had more heart disease. If you look at excavations and archaeological evidence, archaeological anthropology remains people who are hunter-gatherers had less heart disease, and people who were living off of grains in the Fertile Crescent Mesopotamia, as well as the Nile Delta and other places, did have more cardiovascular disease. So if you eat a bunch of grains, it is going to be inflammatory. That's one. Two, back in the 60s, this famous Japanese scientist invented a special grain, red hard winter wheat, that's modern wheat, 40% increase in protein, because he was going to help solve the world of hunger, right? Which is great in theory, but now we realize all these new varieties, including GMO of wheat, corn, etc., they have more protein, but it's wheat protein. Wheat protein is very hard to digest. It has a very high level of hydrophobicity. That's a complicated word. Basically means it's just not very water soluble, hard to digest. You have to have like an iron stomach with lots and lots of acid, lots of enzymes, and then your liver has to produce a whole bunch of extra bile. You really have to be on point to digest large amounts of these new grains that have come out. And then the third is all the chemicals and pesticides. So all three are messing with you, some more than others, depends on genetics.
I'm going to pass it back to Dr. Jason briefly, but I hope one day, Val, that you tell me that your ideal patient or client is the person with no health concerns, because that means that we don't have to pull them out of the pit of despair and a lifetime of being misdiagnosed and treated poorly and treated the wrong way with things that didn't work, with practitioners that were paid to increase the bills rather than to find solutions from the first time. And I hope that we can get to the world where the youngest generation to be born will have access to your systems, to where we can start people off on the right foot. Because I come from the chiropractic world, and I've sold chiropractic for the past 17 years, and specifically solo as a small business owner for the past decade. I've scheduled 11,624 new patients into chiropractic services. And the hardest people for me that come to me to convert are the ones with no problems. But why would you want a problem in order to go and be healthy? And that's where I leave this conversation with everybody today, is what would we actually do if we had the wherewithal to find out what Val and his group are doing to help you before you have the problem? And you don't have to find your ideal client after they've been to 7 other practitioners and have been bought and sold a dream and a promise that didn't work for them, and it didn't work for them again, and it didn't work for them again, and it didn't work for them again and again and again and again. And then they find Val. And there's an old saying that I quote very frequently, that if a man or woman has their health, they have a million dreams. If they don't, they have one. And that's to be healthy again. And if we had a GDP of self-esteem and good health in this 5% world population called America, we would be able to go back to the ranks of the healthiest nation in the world. And I think that that's not a dream. That is a very close reality that, as the work that we all do together, we can get to. But we have to stop rewarding systems that don't work and behaviors for those practitioners that don't help. And we have to come up with new methods for a new world. As you just said, Val, we have more access to this than we ever have before. And like Dr. Jason said, we have more access to this type of a system for less money than ever before. Dr. Jason, back to you.
Oh man, there's just so much there. So thank you for queuing that up. But ultimately I just want to reiterate, that I look forward to a day when man, I mean, wouldn't it be cool? I don't know, like, without getting Big Brother involved in conspiratorial, wouldn't it be cool if we knew babies' genetics right when they're born, and we could start gaming that baby's life around, like, oh man, here's the perfect diet, here's the perfect this, here's that, I mean, I think that could be so awesome. I mean, as myself, use another big word here, but I'm a really poor methylator, not just with MTHFR or the mother effer gene that everybody hears about, but also with like COMT, and part of that is I carry one of the things that I have trouble with. James and my wife and my family know me, is I might carry anxiety and stress around a little bit longer than other people. I don't metabolize those catecholamines, those stress chemicals, as quickly as, someone else that maybe can let, the water roll off their back, or the duck's back or whatever. I'm really bad with colloquialisms, but it doesn't roll off my back the same way. It's just different. So I've had to learn strategies, and thank God I've learned them from James, from my wife, from my coaches, from, a whole bunch of people that have taught me strategies of how I can help my body get rid of those catecholamines, that stress chemistry, because that's what my genetics needs me to do. I mean, there's some supplements I can take as well, but it helps me. Had I known that as a child, I mean, I talked to my therapist, and I can tell you, quoting Richard Gere in Pretty Woman, 10 years and $10,000 in therapy later, I can tell you it's all my mother's fault. But realistically, had I known, I've talked to therapists, and they're like, when were you, think back to a time when you weren't anxious, like as a kid. And I'm like, I was always anxious as a kid, but now with my genetics, I understand why I was anxious as a kid. I'm sure there's environmental factors as well. But nonetheless, I know that. So where am I going with this? Now that I know this, and I look at our two daughters, we have an older daughter and a younger daughter, and our older daughter is one of those, I mean, everybody gets stressed, but she is one of those, it rolls right off her back. I mean, she's able to handle it, deal with it differently. I mean, James knows both the kids, and our younger daughter carries it like me, and carries it a lot. And so, she's 21 now. And thankfully, since, I don't know, after when I started putting my head together or back on straight, based again on my genetics, I was able to teach her, we were able, I don't want to take full credit, but we were all able to teach her, strategies that she can implement, on a minute by minute, day by day, basis, to help her mitigate those stressors, those catecholamines. And I think it's just really cool. Had I known that when I was much, much, much younger, my life would probably be different. Had I been able to teach that to her when she was much, much, much younger, I think that some of the struggles and stresses that she went through also wouldn't have been there. And that's just one tiny little facet. I mean, literally, we talked about two little pieces of code, two tiny snippets is what I was going to say, but I was trying to make a pun there. But two tiny little polymorphisms in this enormous code that has had enormous impact on my life. Wish I would have learned it earlier. But then on her life, I mean, if I would have known what she's been learning since her mid-teens, in my mid-teens, I'd be a different person altogether. But it's people like Val that are doing this work to help uncover that. So it's one of those things where we don't have to wait until, man, why am I stressed all the time? I mean, it's just run your code. I mean, to me, James, like if you ask me what's the best client to run genetics on, I'm like a brand new newborn baby. Like that's unless Val says otherwise, because I don't think genetics change without CRISPR or other types of technology. I think the time to do it is as early as possible so that we can create the right environment, the right diet, the right, biochemical signaling, the right supplementation, for that child as they grow into adulthood. That's my opinion. James, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to take us home here. And I just want to acknowledge Val for being with us today. And the thing that always pops up to me when we have these types of conversations on Get Better Faster are we need to test and not guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in the chiropractic world, the reason we do x-rays and heart rate variability and surface EMG, and we do different scans with thermography and find inflammation zones and subluxation areas, is because we don't want to just pop and pray. And I think that that's the world that we come through from allopathics at the moment, is they are the ones that are just popping and praying. And I don't know if they're praying. I think that they're just popping. And I think that we're in a world full of popping with no prayer. And I think that that's caused the downstream effect on the culture of the neighborhoods that we live in. And you can see it from the mental psychosis to the anxiety, to the depression, to the alcoholism, to whatever ism it is. There's a lot of ism out there. And what's on the end of that is an unhappy family and an unhappy individual with depression and mental illness. And what happens after that is the person gets some type of entrenched illness within them because they don't know how to self-regulate and self-think and self-heal. And it becomes some type of ptosis, which becomes some type of a cancer, which becomes some type of a lost life. So today's conversation, bringing it all home, just want to tell you, Val, this has been absolutely mind-blowing for me. And Dr. Jason, your passion, I'm sure anybody that watches this episode looks forward to working with you also, and they can feel the intention that we have with this show and why we've raised the ranks. If you guys want to know real solutions, is you have to do the work consistently. And we have been raising the ranks since this show has dropped. So I want to thank our listeners and our viewers. If you guys have questions on this episode, go over and put them when this episode goes live. Ask those questions. Ask how to connect with Val. Val's got his hand up. What's up, Val?
No, go ahead, Dr. Jason, you first.
I just wanted to say, just on what James was saying, we do have a lot of people that ask how to work with me, but I think one of the coolest things is that Val and I are collaborating and working together. So, I'll pat myself on the back. I mean, I think I'm a pretty damn good biochemical analysis, pattern analysis guy. I mean, God blessed me with like 2 or 3 gifts and 1 talents. I mean, some people get a lot of talents. I'm really good at pattern analysis with laboratory medicine. I can see it, patterns that other people can't. But Val sees it with genetics, and when we combine those 2 skills, it's like holy crap. Like, I mean, it's mind blowing work. So, coming to either one of us, you can have access to my team, myself, Val and his team as well. The last thing that I want to say, I'm gonna turn it over to Val. One of the obstacles I think that we face in what we're talking about is that all of these great solutions are generally not covered by insurance. And in America, everything's like, is it covered by insurance? Is it covered by insurance? Right? Because we've been sold again that our health should be able to be paid for, by someone else. That's a whole discussion that we can have on another day. But I will say this, no one will find the solutions to their health needs within a system that has allowed them to stay so sick for so long. And I really want to, I'll die on that hill until proven otherwise. I've planted a flag and it's true. We're just not going to find it in that conventional insurance-based solution where it's how far up could I drive the revenue for the hospital, clinic, or myself so that there's more money being made.
And a system that depends on you continuing to be sick and never really getting better.
Yes, absolutely. And a system that depends on, you said it perfectly, Val, that depends on you staying a customer of their drug, of their procedures, of their system. There's no incentive to get people better in that system. James says it all the time. There's no money in healthy people. There's no money in dead people. It's keeping people sick and alive, and it's a really disgusting system in my opinion.
We get this all the time. You get it all the time too. You'll have a patient, you won't see them for 2 years, and then they'll come with some other issue. It's because you fixed it. You fixed the problem. They're not sick.
Yeah. Well, no, you're totally right. I want to pass it right over to you, Val. Before I do, I just want to say thank you again for your time today. It's always fascinating to jump on calls with you. I always learn so much, and just thank you again for your time today. But yeah, I want to pass it right over to you for some parting thoughts.
Parting thoughts. First of all, I am so grateful, not just that you allowed me to be on your podcast, but that the 2 of you exist. Well, you and your wife and Jim. I am so glad that you exist at this time in humanity, because what you're doing is the groundwork. Everyone talks a big talk, but you guys are like, we're going to also do a podcast, and we're going to go for years and years and get information across. That's the groundwork. That's the actual heavy lifting that basically we just need more Jameses and Dr. Jasons in the world. And I'm so glad you guys are doing this.
And the glue that holds us together, Dr. Rachel. Let's not forget her. She's
Dr. Rachel. That's right. That's right.
We barely exist without her.
She's not visible here, but she is awesome. And anyone who knows Dr. Jason understands that. Yep, absolutely. I was going to say, geneticwellbeing.com. That's the company. We've had that since 2018. And there's a few things to whet your appetite. There's a few things I'm working on right now. One of them is a very high-end genetic test that looks at athletics, competitive athletics, but also for middle-aged people like you and me just wanting to be fit, having like a fitness test, overall health and fitness. So that's coming out in about a month, and it's awesome. It's really awesome. And the second one, there's three. The second one is like a mental health and addictions test that has already launched, but I'm gonna like a soft launch. I guess I'll start telling people about it next month. So that's like really awesome too. And it's the most advanced addictions, including alcohol, drugs, food, sugar, fat, etc. addiction, but also non-food addictions like OCD, um, different types of mental health issues. And then lastly, there's a breast cancer pathways genetic test that we're working on, which I know that, James, you were talking about earlier. You were saying, what was the mTOR? You wanted to talk about mTOR. That's one of the genes that we look at for this test. So sometimes you want to increase mTOR activity, sometimes you want to decrease it. So there's a 45 pathways in this genetic test for breast cancer pathways, and it's grouped into 10 categories, and it's got I sprinkle some microbiome here and some glycomics, Dr. Diadamo there, and a whole bunch of hundreds of different algorithms I've created over the years. So it's really nice. It'll tell you which pathways to look at more versus others if you're trying to prevent cancer. And with that, I will leave you be for now.
Well, I appreciate the work that you're doing also, and how you're giving real life solutions to real people. And as Jason was saying, God has given him some synthesis on helping people with a few things. Mine is the ability to construct wisdom within the words that we share with people, and acknowledging people for what they do in this world. And over 1,400 interviews later, I feel like I've had a driver's position or sitting shotgun with legends of the world, and able to share their messages. And through osmosis and the intelligent model of guests that I've had, I've upped my game, and been at podcasting for 8.5 years, and feels like dog years. So I feel like anytime somebody wants to take on doing what you're acknowledging us for, it's a whole lifestyle shift. You have to embody a character that didn't exist before, and you have to own the responsibility of being honest with your position in the world, and don't put up with shit. And I think that that's a big part of why Jason and I work well together, is because he's the clinician that can take your poop, your spit, your blood, and your urine, and he can make you a better human. And I can take him and launch something with integrity, and we can help more people with it. So guests like you, Val, make that a reality. And I just wanted to acknowledge both of you. And for our listeners, the other acknowledgement point outside of Rachel, if you've been struggling with your health, trying diet after diet, or the medical, pharmaceutical, industrial complex methods, or supplement after supplement, and nothing seems to work, what Val just shared is the reason why. And to quote myself, we don't want to test, or we don't want to guess, we want to test. Your DNA is the instruction manual that your body came with. And like Dr. Jason said, we want to test that from day one. I was just at a seminar, and one of the speakers asked me, to all of us in the audience, to close our eyes and to imagine the best day of our lives. And I opened my eyes after 2 minutes, and I said, the best day of my life was the day I was born, and the other best day is today. And I think that if people had that reality, they would go do the genetic test with you guys at Genetic Wellbeing, so they can live that and not just envision that.
Well, you don't need to go there. You can go straight to Dr. Jason Bradley and Dr. Rachel, because we work with them. So
even easier, just go to getbetterfasterpodcast.com, and we'll have all the links there for anything that anybody wants, whether,
Yep.
Yeah, we'll help you guys there.
Well, I just wanted to give people the solutions for the questions that are probably percolating in their minds right now. But remember, guys that are watching, gals that are watching, nobody's coming to save you. Even if you know me, I'll say it over and over. You might not like what I always have to say, but I'm going to give you the real deal. Nobody is going to come save you. You got to save yourself. But solutions like this prove that you can save yourself. And that's why I course corrected and asked about solutions within today's episode rather than just pontificating intelligence, because the solutions are the only thing that's going to set people free. And it's the only thing that's going to save our nation, really. So Val, thanks again for being here and the incredible work you're doing. And to you all, our Get Better Faster Nation, thank you for listening and for your continued support. You know, the best way so you can show your support, share this episode. Share this episode with somebody who needs to hear this message. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode and get all the behind the scenes action we've got coming your way. And as Val and Dr. Jason mentioned, if you want to have any help with the gene work that Val's doing or the functional medicine work and functional health work that Dr. Jason's doing, go to getbetterfasterpodcast.com. We've got more incredible guests lined up who are going to blow your mind with real solutions for reclaiming your health, your happiness, and your life. Until next time, keep questioning everything and keep getting better faster. Thank you, man.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for listening, everybody. Love you all.
Bye for now.